Hi friends, my name is Jake. Welcome to Canadian Cutting Edge. It's Fixed Blade Friday. We've got a small knife by Fremont Knives. I was going to say Baldwin Creek. Baldwin Creek is the name of this knife. Model number FRE00418. It's a full tang knife, 1095 carbon steel, titanium nitride coating, G10 handle scales, and it comes with a sheath. This is a budget knife. Chicago Knife Works has this at the lowest price that I could find. It's not a referral link, it's just, that's the lowest price I could find, so that's what I'm telling you about. I will leave a link down below for you to get it. I don't think it's available outside of North America, USA only, I think. Canadians you can buy from Chicago Knife Works, they will ship. And a fixed blade like this has zero issues whatsoever ever coming into Canada. No problem at all. It's a thick blade. It's a chunky, hard little beast. So let's go to the tabletop and take a good look at it. First off, the sheath. This is one of those nylon sheaths. It's got a plastic liner. Believe it or not, this is probably the best sheath of this style that I've had in many, many years. I don't like this style of sheath, but this one's well made. It's got rivets instead of merely sewn together. It's got a plastic liner on both sides. And we've got a snap to hold it in place. And there is a belt loop. It's stitched over at least twice on either side. So not bad. If you're going to get this kind of sheath, you can do a whole lot worse than this. You know, it's got Fremont Knives in big, bright white letters there, but that's nothing a Sharpie can't fix. If you don't have Sharpies where you live, just a black permanent marker, and then it wouldn't stand out quite so much. You'd probably still be able to read it, but I don't like big branding on my hip. It's just, I don't like that. So the sheath is okay, and it's easy to remedy that big white brand name on there. On the knife itself, the only writing and branding on it is right there. You just have that F and a small K inside a circle. So not bad at all. Like I said, it's full tang all the way down. And then we've got an exposed, I wouldn't call that a pommel, but it's got an exposed end at the end of the handle with a lanyard hole that's been chamfered, so that's good. So yeah, you can use this, a nice hard end if you need to crush some things. Should work fine. And the lanyard, that'll stay on there quite securely. The G10 on here has been permanently pinned on with these brass or bronze pins, probably brass, probably bronze. I don't know which one it is. I'm not a metal expert, at least certainly not brass and bronze. I'm more of a woodworker kind of guy for materials. G10, they're flat slabs with just rounded edges. When I first saw this, I was thinking, I wonder how comfortable that's going to be. Turns out it's very comfortable, at least in my hands. It just fits very, very well. Big, strong, fist grip or saber grip. Well, yeah, I guess you can only put your thumb up there for a saber grip. To push through things, that's just the perfect grip for cutting small things that are hard to cut. And yeah, it works well. Nothing wrong with the grip, except for if people want knives where you can take the handle scales off. This isn't that. I really do like this little bump right here to separate the index finger from the other fingers. It works perfectly. A reverse grip, if you're going to use this reverse grip to, puncture things, really hard things to puncture, that works as well. The tip of this knife is strong. It's thick behind the tip. It's over 1.5 millimeters thick right behind, that sharpened edge. So it's a strong tip. The carbon steel has got coating on it. I'm going to do some more cut tests on it. It has a few marks on here already. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some cut tests after I resharpen this knife. And I'll add that into the video at the end as well. So this titanium nitride coating, it's not that great. But this carbon steel is good if it's protected, so it's there. The blade was not, well, I guess it was not sharpened very well for two reasons. Whoever was sharpening it didn't do a very good job. And for second reason, when they created the main bevels on this, they left it very thick behind the grind. You can even see it. I'll give you a close-up picture this way. You can see how thick that is right there. And, oh, I didn't write down the measurement. The measurement's on the screen, how thick the steel is right there. So they had to remove a fair bit of steel to bring it down to an edge. I would have liked it to have been thinner when they made the main bevel already, because this is about 1.5 millimeters thick behind the grind. So when you go to sharpen this again, you're going to have to remove a lot of steel. Thankfully, 1095 is not a very hard steel. It's about 55 Rockwell hardness. It's a really good outdoor ODYSEE kind of steel. It's a steel that you can sharpen outside in the field if you need to without too much difficulty. That does mean it loses its edge fairly quickly, but we're not talking about, a high-end pocket knife right here. We're talking about an outdoor working knife. I like to think of this size of knife, as a secondary carry, as a secondary camp knife, a secondary survival knife, secondary bushcraft knife, whatever you have. Probably not a primary knife. It's just not that kind. But it comes at a cost. This thing is heavy. I would never pay $45 for this knife. But for 20 bucks, yeah, I kind of like it. If you like the other things about it, it's certainly worth the $20. If you don't like the other things, then of course you don't like it. Let's go over the sizes and measurements. We'll leave this tape measure on the screen while I do that. The reason I do that, if you don't know, is for people who want to skip past it. If you just forward past, and as soon as you see this yellow thing disappear, I'm done talking about the measurements and stuff. It weighs 181 grams. 6.2 ounces. You add this thing in, 208 grams, 7.35 ounces. That's a fair bit of weight. At least the sheath is quite light. The cutting edge length, and there is no sharpener's choil, so it's not exact where that is. I measured it about 75.7 millimeters. That's 2.98 inches, so 3 inches of cutting edge. The blade length, tip to the closest spot on the handle, 79.2 millimeters, 3.12 inches. The thickness of the blade, 4.8 millimeters. That's 0.189 of an inch. Yep, like I said, it's thick. The blade depth, it's biggest right here, 30.7 millimeters, 1.21 inches. The thickness behind the grind, oh, I was wrong. I read that wrong. 1.15 millimeters, not 1.5 millimeters. 1.15 millimeters, 45 thousandths of an inch. For this kind of knife, I'd like it half as thick. Half as thick as that is what I would like to have. And it's every single one that you get is going to be that thick, because the main bevel is made by machines, and you're all going to be done. They're all going to be the same. The grind angle, this thing was sharpened fairly poorly. On this side, it started at 25.4 degrees. In the middle, it's about 20.3 degrees. And at the heel here, 19.6 degrees. And on this side, it started at 20.8 degrees, 14.8, 13.1 degrees. Yeah, so if you want a consistent angle, if you put this on a guided sharpening system, for you to get the whole thing one angle, you're going to need to remove a lot of steel in some places. Over here, if you wanted to sharpen it all the way back to the bevel, you're going to waste a lot of steel. The handle now. The handle length is 98.5 millimeters, 3.88 inches. Oh, that's just the G10. Handle thickness, it's almost exactly 14 millimeters on the G10, which is 0.552 of an inch. The handle depth within the grip area, it's biggest right here, 28.8 millimeters, 1.13 inches. The grip in here, it's about 9 centimeters, about 3.5 inches. And the total length of this knife is 183 millimeters. Oh, I didn't do the conversion. It's on the screen what the conversion is, but it's going to be just a bit under 7¼ inches. So yeah, it's a smaller knife. The good thing is it feels really good in hand. I like the lanyard hole here. I like the grip of it. This is a good knife if you need a strong tip. I like 1095 steel. It's one of the carbon steels that I like a lot. You know, the sheath, it's well made, even though it is quite cheap. You know, there's some good pros about it. The cons, you know, it's a minor thing. I don't like that much branding on anything that's on my hip. The knife is just too thick behind the grind. It just is. You know, even if it was 30 thousandths of an inch, you know, I could live with that. But, you know, 1/45 thousandths, 1.15 millimeters, that's just way too thick. For a user, that is. It's just too thick. It's too heavy for the size. I doubt there's holes in the handle here. The balance point, it's back here. You know, so they could have put some holes in the handle to bring the balance point right here, which would have been preferred. It didn't have to be this heavy. It wouldn't have cost much to make that lighter. And, you know, if the handles came off easily, you could make it lighter yourself. I cut with it. It cuts the way I would expect a knife like this to cut. It doesn't cut all that well. It doesn't cut terribly. It's just not great. I'd like it to be, well, I'm sounding like a broken record. If it was thinner behind the grind, then this full flat grind would be much more usable, much more friendly. They just made it too chunky. Just too chunky for practical use. If you're looking for a big, fat, a small fat knife, not big fat, you know, then maybe this is the knife for you. And at 20 bucks, hey, you can do a whole lot worse for 20 bucks. So if you're in the market for a knife like this and you don't mind the extra weight and you don't mind how thick it is behind the grind, everything else is pretty minor in comparison. Like the sharpening, you know, you should be able to sharpen knives yourself or have a knife sharpened. So the factory edge, how badly they sharpened it, is not a big deal because that's temporary. It can be changed. The other things can't be changed. Well, I could bring this knife to somebody and have that bevel ground so it's thinner behind the grind, but that's probably going to cost more than 20 bucks, right? So then it's not worth it. So there you go. Those are my thoughts, feelings about the Baldwin Creek from Fremont Knives. I do have to say they gave me this knife, and thank you very much, Fremont Knives, for giving this to me. It got held up by Canada Customs for almost 8-9 months. Wow, no, it's been 10 months. Oh, it's really unfortunate, but sometimes that happens. Even though, you know, there was a folding knife in the package, and the folding knife got taken away, but the fixed blade came through. So there you go. Sometimes it's just tough getting stuff into Canada. Well, I sharpened it to about 50 microns, which is good for an outdoor ODYSEE knife, and 1095, that's just fine to sharpen it to. And I went and used it on some hardwood. I made some feather sticks that actually worked quite well with this. I debarked some young apple tree branches, making my own walking sticks, so I did a little bit of that. But other things like cutting up cardboard, you know, I did the cardboard first, right after I sharpened it, and that's the kind of tearing I got. And the reason is because it's so thick behind the grind. You know, the cutting edge can do stuff, but it's so thick that it has to push the cardboard out of the way, and it tears while it's being pushed out of the way before the edge can get to the spot that it wants to cut. So there's limited purpose for a knife like this with how thick it is behind the grind. But can it be useful? Yes, I think it can be. It's a narrow range of uses, but they're there. I used some hardwood. I did, you know, the stab testing where I stabbed the wood and then I pried it out. Because it's so thick behind the grind, it's plenty strong enough for that kind of thing. Did a little bit of carving. It works okay for those kinds of things. It really depends on what you want to do with the knife. I guess that's true of any knife, isn't it? So, thanks for watching my video. Thank you for liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. Thanks to my Patreon supporters. You guys are the best. And remember, friends, cut towards your chum, not your thumb.